Greetings and welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation. To our members, friends, and everyone joining us in our virtual congregation on YouTube today.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Robin Landerman Zucker, minister of this congregation, and I will be hosting our virtual recorded worship service for today, October 25th, 2020, with music from Roomie, Rebecca Prizznick, and members of our Beacon Choir. We welcome the Reverend Patty Willis of Granite Peak UU Church in Prescott, Arizona, to our virtual pulpit today. Her sermon is entitled, The Survival of the Yavapai People. We still have sanctuary care packages for some of our members and friends that haven't been picked up, with objects to bring you closer to our virtual services and enable you to participate in our weekly rituals. These include a small chalice, a hope stone for joys and sorrows, and a card with our mission and covenant. You can pick one up here at Beacon from 9 to 2 on Mondays and Wednesdays, or we can try to get it out to you. Just let us know. We are glad that you have made Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation a part of this day in your spiritual life. Our congregation is spiritually open and intentionally inclusive. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are always welcome here. Our members and friends bring many interests, theologies, and viewpoints to our door, and here we trust you will find a common desire for meaningful community and spiritual growth, and for relevant religious exploration in a framework with very flexible borders. Membership in this congregation is open to anyone who chooses to walk with us in the spirit of love, the search for truth, and the pursuit of justice. As I light the chalice, the symbol of our free faith, I invite you to light your own chalice or candle at home and recite the words with me that you will see on the screen.
We light this chalice with a flame that draws us together. With this flame, we cut through the darkness of isolation and are warmed by the fires of our inner connection.
The mission and covenant of Beacon express our values and our vision of ourselves as a gathered community in the world. Please recite the mission and covenant with me. You'll see the words on your screen. The mission of Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation is to be a welcoming community that embraces diverse thought and belief and builds a just, peaceful, and compassionate world. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in kindness. Thus do we covenant. And now, let's welcome Rev Patty to our Beacon community.
I welcome all who are here and all who are on the edges, disliking Zoom, not hearing this, and all who are tired and wishing that they could close their eyes and wake up to good news on November 3rd. Isn't this the longest month ever? You are all welcome here. I see a few heads nodding. Let us breathe together this morning and extend our welcome ever outward. At the General Assembly for Unitarian Universalists this summer, we gathered to do the work of justice. And at the center of that was considering differently the landing of the Mayflower in Plymouth 400 years before, and to think of ourselves in solidarity with the Mashpee Wampanoag people who welcomed the Pilgrims and are at this time fighting to retain their land. And today, as Unitarian Universalists of Yavapai County, Arizona, people who love the beauty of this land, we are called to understand the people on whose land we live and hike and kayak and look out at the vistas that call us to wonder and awe. Let us call in the beauty of Watson Lake, Lynx Lake, Granite Mountain, which is a place of protective mountain spirits for the Yavapai, mountain spirits that drive away fear. This is a time we need that granite mountain. Let us hold together the manzanitas, the ponderosa pines, the deer and the javelina, the mountain lions, the bobcats, the sky and its magnificent clouds. I invite you now to say the places because I could not name them all, and you can say things over again. The places, animals, things about this place that you love. Let us say those things into this silence.
Please join me in singing "O Brother Sun."
Each week, members and friends of our congregation are invited to share personal joys and sorrows in the supportive fellowship of this community. The ritual we have for that is we take a stone and we place it in water, symbolizing that the ripples, what affects one of us, affects all of us, because we're part of a community. So this week, I put a stone in for all of us who are continuing to find ways to cope with all of the consequences of the coronavirus, the continued need to isolate, and the difficulties that has brought for people, isolation, homeschooling, job loss, so on and so forth. This is for all of us as we continue to make our way on this journey through such an unknown territory of COVID-19. It's October 25th. We're getting closer to our election on November 3rd, and there is a lot of turmoil and a lot of stress. And in a minute, we're going to be doing some breathing, and I think breathing is even more important now than ever. Getting away from social media, getting away from our computers, getting out in the fresh air, trying to be somewhere other than the chaos and sort of craziness of this election season. Stand firm, stick to your values and principles, breathe, reach out to people in whatever you can, and try to deal with the stress that we're all feeling right now. That's for all of us. For people in different parts of this country who are seeing the effects of climate change, fires, hurricanes, drought, snowstorms, again, may we stick together and do all we can to protect our planet. This for us and for our planet. And finally, for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken because they are either too tender or too private to share, for all of us in the Beacon community, all we know, all the people we know in the Beacon community, and all the people we don't know. May we hold all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken. And may we remember that everyone is fighting their own private battle. We don't know what it is, but because we're human, we know this to be true. So let us be kind, compassionate, flexible, and forgiving with one another. I want to remind you that you can send me your joys and sorrows to minister@beaconuu.com to be included in the Sunday service. You can also arrange to have me record you. But next week, we are going to try something new and different on Sunday, November 1st, a worship watch party on Zoom. So I'm inviting you to watch the service together at 10 a.m. on Sunday. You'll log into Zoom and the links will be provided in the e-news and the Google group. And I will share the screen with our recorded YouTube service. We'll pause for some live joys and sorrows, and the chat will be open for written comments. The Zoom link, as I said, will be the same as the social hour, and it'll be posted in places where you can find it. You can also watch the service the way you normally do on demand once it's been posted. But we think that this watch party will create a tangible energy and connection and carry us fully into our post-service gathering. And I hope you'll try it. The post-service gathering is now still at 11, still on Zoom, but it will, as I said, include live joys and sorrows and also a centering question related to the service. And today's question is, what is your relationship to the land you live on now and the land of your ancestors? So I hope we'll see you for the post-service gathering and starting next week with our experiment to have a watch party at 10 a.m. on Zoom. And now we're going to go into some quiet time. And I invite you to put your feet on the floor and uncross your arms and just breathe. Just have everything feel open. Put down anything you might be holding and just relax your body. Often our shoulders are up here when we're stressed out. So try to drop your shoulders, close your eyes, and breathe in 4 beats through your nose and 5 or 6 beats out through your mouth in a steady stream, seeing if you can create spaciousness and real relaxation from the crown of your head to where your feet are rooted to the earth. So let's just breathe. Try to feel where you really need to be opened up. Stop and feel, breathe, and allow. We'll be silent together in our breathing. Blessed be.
From the Exodus Trail in Arizona Highways by Annette McGivney. In December 2016, about 140 years after the forced march of the Yavapais from the fertile Verde Valley to the harsh desert lands of San Carlos, Jordan Lewis, a high school-aged Yavapai, was literally walking in the footsteps of his ancestors. The first leg of the trek between Clarkdale and Camp Verde was nothing like what the Yavapais and Apaches experienced in 1875. Lewis and his partners walked down paved highways, through shopping centers, past restaurants, and around housing developments. But as they headed southeast into the Masatzal wilderness, the terrain became remote and rugged, virtually unchanged from 140 years before. As Lewis trudged up 5,800-foot Hackberry Mountain and across Hardscrabble Mesa, he thought of his ancestors and how different his life is today. They had such a strong mindset, he says. They never knew when they were going to stop. They could only rest when the cavalry let them. But I got to walk without anyone looking over my shoulder. I am free. I have shoes.
Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me. Above and below me hovers the beautiful. I'm surrounded by it. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I'm aware of it, and in my old age, I will walk quietly on the beautiful path.
Now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me, above and below me. Now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me. Now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me. Beauty is before me. Now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me, above and below me. Now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me, above and below.
Even the creation story of the Yavapai people is a story of survival at impossible odds. Long, long ago in the beginning, people lived in the underworld. A great tree grew there, which pierced the sky of the underworld, and some people climbed up the tree into the world at a place called Ahangaskiaiwa, now known as Montezuma's Well, near the Verde Valley and Sedona. The people, though, who climbed out forgot to close off the hole, and water flooded out, killing all the people. Someone, though, had hollowed out the tree, and a woman named Witapokwi found it for refuge and then sealed up the opening with pitch. She took food with her for a number of years, and she took birds with her. She was told not to look out until the log lay perfectly still, which means that for several years she was rocking and moving in the waters in complete darkness. Then the stillness came, and she opened the hole and found that the log had stranded on top of San Francisco Mountain because the water had not fully gone over the mountain. Widapokwe got out, and she walked around. And then she walked down the mountain into the red rock country. When she lay under a dripping spring, she became pregnant with a daughter, who then, after the daughter grew older, became pregnant with a son, a superhero by the name of Skatakamcha, whose stories are marvelous. And in these beginnings, we see the close ties between the Yavapai people and a specific place on this earth, for all people are said to come from this woman, Widapokwe. As one writer said, this stretch of earth gave birth to them and continued to give them life. There are a few dates suggested as possible times from which the Yavapai, those 4 groups that I spoke about in the very beginning, that spoke the same language, there are a few dates suggested about when they entered this land, from 700 AD to 1100 AD, and their vast ancestral territory measured some 20,000 square miles, more than 1/6 of Arizona. They had what they called rancherias, or camps in various places. For example, they had rancherias and they gathered mezcal near Pine Mountain. And the Mingus Mountain and Black Hill areas were sources of juniper berries, piñon nuts, and acorns. They also farmed and hunted rabbits and rats in this area. They loved the pack rat or wood rat. I'd have to keep Bruno very hidden. The Verde River was a resource rich for the Yavapai, where they had rancherias, or these small encampments where they would hunt, from which they would hunt deer and quail, gather mezcal, prickly pear, berries, and they utilized the yucca plant and mesquite. In Chino Valley, they hunted deer and antelope. They had camps and grew maize along Big Bug Creek. At camps at the Date Creek Mountains, Peoples Valley, and near Turkey Creek and Black Canyon, they hunted antelope, deer, and rabbits and gathered saguaro fruit, walnuts, and mesquite beans. Acorns, manzanita, mescal, and walnuts were gathered near our very own Granite Mountain. They ranged over a large territory, moving from one camp to another according to the season, by the time of ripening or of flood, or of the ripening of wild foods, and the locale of the game that they hunted. These Yavapai people, they spoke a language of the Yuman group, as did the groups to their west of the Colorado, the Cocopa, Quechuan, Mojave, and Chemchueve. Their languages were different dialects, but mutually understandable. But on the east, the Yavapai were bordered by the Apache, who were of a very different ethnic origin and spoke a language belonging to the Athapascan stock, totally unrelated to the language of the Yavapais, as different as, say, French and Hungarian. And until 1820 and the coming of the white settlers, their lives remained relatively unchanged. Two elders, Yavapai elders, living in the McDowell Reservation, Mike Harrison and John Williams, whose faces are imprinted so much like my great-grandmother's was, with smiles and laughter. They repeated over and over again in their oral history that their people were not Apache and that the Yavapai had been defenseless against the pistols and rifles of the U.S. Army and white settlers. They were often targeted because they were mistaken for the Apache, who were more aggressive against the white settlers and army. But I want to tell you this because I think you might get confused as I have been. There is a group called the Yavapai Apache. It's one group that's centered near Montezuma's Well, and they have a large casino there, and you will see Yavapai Apache. This is the one group that holds both ancestries and keep both languages of the Yavapai and the Apache. So I'm wondering now, getting back to ourselves, I wonder if you have a tragedy in your family history. Because in the group that gathers to talk with me on Sunday afternoon at 3, many of the people who gather have tragic stories from their ancestors. One of the people who gathers has the tragedy of many family members being murdered in the Holocaust. And also there's someone who gathers whose family, many people were killed, and he experienced a concentration camp in Yugoslavia for people of German descent after World War II. And one who gathers there has a history in his family of the enslavement that began in this country 400 and now 401 years ago. And we tell these stories to each other as important stories, as part of who we are, to explain ourselves. And in the 1970s, 2 Yavapai elders, Mike Harrison and John Williams, whose song you will hear later, they were afraid that the history of the Yavapai would be lost. Their history was an oral history, and until that time, it had been written down by a Yavapai by the name of Ho'omothia, or Mike Burns, who knew English. He had written that down in a journal, but that journal was never published until recently. It was sitting in the Charlotte Hall archives, and they did not know about that journal. And those 2 Yavapai elders wanted their story to be told, so they called upon a friend of theirs who then contacted ASU and an anthropologist who also has an extremely interesting history, who is from Vienna. Her name is Dr. Sigrid Kara. She worked with these 2 elders for many years, and out of that oral history was created a book that I highly recommend. And I'm going to have all of these books in the chat at the end of the time. But before, and also I wanted to let you know that when she died, in fact, all 3 people, these 2 elders and Sigrid, died not very distant times from one another. And she is also in the burial grounds of the McDowell Reservation. But on the day they first met, they told the stories of these 2 tragedies that are so important, because they thought she had to understand those first. These are the stories. In 1872, up to 200 Yavapai, the numbers are very different in different histories of this, but up to 200 Yavapai were killed in a cave that was known after the tragedy as Skeleton Cave. It's in the Salt River Canyon. Many Yavapai had gone there to be safe because the cavalry was coming through, but a young boy of 8 or 9 years old named Homothia, who was later known as Mike Burns and was the man who wrote the history Sitting in Charlotte Hall, whose mother had been killed by soldiers a couple of years before, and he was the caretaker of his brother and sister. He was captured by the army, and he was coerced into showing the soldiers where his family was hiding. He also, with the soldiers, were Apache and Pima guides. This massacre destroyed much of the knowledge because knowledge was not written down, it was held by people. It also turned a cave, which had been a place of refuge and beauty, into a place of cruelty and carnage, as happened to Jewish people living in Poland and Lithuania and the many places connected with the Holocaust. Tragedy shifts our relationship to our homeland. And having an oral culture handed down through family systems, the loss of elders was extremely important to them. That loss cut families off from ancestral knowledge. And then the second tragedy happened only 3 years after that. The Yavapai people, having been told that they would be able to stay in the Verde Valley, they were forced to march to San Carlos, to the land of the Apaches, and live in a camp that had been designated for the Apaches because of their armed resistance to the US Army. On that walk to San Carlos in the winter, with many of the Yavapai without shoes, without proper supplies, cut a great gash in the history of the Yavapai people. Food ran out after a few weeks. Women who gave birth were forced immediately to keep walking. There was great suffering. And then for 25 years, the Yavapai worked to return to their ancestral lands. But 25 years is a long time. Many people died on the march, and then others married Apaches. Many made a home in San Carlos and found it difficult to return. And according to oral historians, again, much knowledge was lost. The ways of the rancherias, of living and thriving on the land of the ancestors, and returning to a land that had then again been diminished in size. These two tragedies are stories that we must hold sacred in order to be in relationship with this land and the people who lived on it peacefully for centuries, if not a millennium. And yet, in spite of these tragedies, you will see that 2 of the books that I read for this are entitled The Survival of the Yavapai. For in spite of these tragedies that threatened to annihilate Yavapai culture, they survived. They are surviving. Jordan Lewis, that high school-aged Yavapai who is literally walking in the footsteps of his ancestors, looking back, one of his favorite entries in his journal was recorded at Theodore Roosevelt Lake when he was camped next to a pond that was bustling with ducks. He wrote, "Definition of strength, having the power of physical and emotional strength to overcome within yourself what seems unbearable." Given our current times, I'm going to read this again. Definition of strength, having the power of physical and emotional strength to overcome within yourself what seems unbearable. The Yavapai have much to teach the world of resilience and courage and the healing of the herbs that grow in forests, mountainsides, and to the sides of rivers, where many of you are biking by them or walking by them. The Yavapai stayed in community, even with that young boy, although he was bullied, the young boy who directed the soldiers and scouts to the cave called Skeleton Cave. The Yavapai believe in the power of singing, praying, and dancing. And I wonder if you have ever wanted to change the landscape, for singing can be that powerful. On a morning walk on Friday, a woman was walking towards us on one of the sloping roads in our neighborhood, and she said, "I've noticed that every year this road gets steeper." I wonder if some of you have had the same noticing. Well, in Sedona, there is a legend of a mountain that used to be much taller. The Yavapai say that they sang it smaller. They sang it down to its present size. You could talk of erosion, but I believe that would diminish the beauty of this image and the very real power of song to lift us and mold us in new ways. I wonder what our singing and praying could do to transform the frightening political landscape around us, or at least our perception of it. This is the time to sing and to pray and to dance.
The spirit of generosity and gratitude flows through Beacon. Each week, whether we are here in our physical sanctuary or we're here together in our virtual sanctuary, we take an offering to support Beacon. And right now, supporting Beacon is more important than ever, as many of the sources we have for our operating budget aren't here in this virtual realm. So we really encourage you to donate what you can to Beacon. You can go to our website and find the donate button, and you can make a secure online contribution through the Vanco application. We ask that you make that directly from your bank account if you can, to save us the fees associated with credit cards. Or you can send us a check to our Flagstaff address, 510 North LaRue Street, Flagstaff, Arizona, 86001. Either way, we are so grateful for your generosity to Beacon at this time. And finally, when we're here together, we come together in a circle and we join hands, really symbolizing the connection of our community. And so I'd like you to imagine yourself joining hands with the people of Beacon. Maybe you're not part of our community. We still want you in this circle of hands. We want to know you. So as you envision that, feel the power of community that will endure and be sustained during this time. Stay safe, stay well. You are visible and known. We are Beacon, always connected. Blessed be, blessed we, and amen.
Let us walk with respect and with care on this land. May this day be the beginning of a relationship with the history of this land and with the people under whose care it flourished for centuries. A Ute elder and dear friend, Forrest Kutch, said to me, "We don't want our land back. We want you to take care of our land."